Good day, everyone. This is Matt Sikes here with Verify. What you should be seeing is a graphical dashboard screen in one of my lab environments. Now, Verify is certainly a multi-platform, multi-modular solution. So we're going to focus on Zoom today, but just want to kind of start off right here and give a little exposure that certainly we support multiple UC platforms. They can certainly be single pane of glass, within a single pane of glass, as you can certainly see here. So people that may be on uh, utilizing on-prem call manager that may be migrating to one of the the big three platforms as we call them, or more specifically for today to the Zoom phone instance, we can kind of provide that level of migration adoption for calls dropping off and leaving the call manager environments and heading over to whichever platform you may be moving to that we certainly support. So with all that being said, so there's all kinds of different ways that we can build dashboards within Verify. There's, I wouldn't say an endless amount, but there's quite an almost limitless amount of dashboards you can certainly create. They can be certainly tailored towards different content, different audience members, different platforms, of course, different locations, different regional managers, et cetera, et cetera. So there's definitely different ways to go ahead and showcase these out, to build them out, to share them with other application users um, that that can log in and view that content, maybe copy and make some tidbits of their own in their own dashboards off of those shared contents, or even there's the permalinking option that we'll get into a little later as well, where we can certainly just provide a read-only URL to these dashboards within the environment, so they can be leveraged and browsed to or up and running on television screens in the environment to each their own. So I'll mosey over a couple dashboards here. So the basis for today is to kind of discuss how to assemble an executive kind of level dashboard for Zoom Phone out of Verify. Now, there's definitely different ways, again, to go ahead and cultivate this content. Verify is going to be storing all the data from the Zoom API to the SQL database tables that they can be certainly called upon. So we'll get into that in a moment or so. So there's going to be a little bounce back and forth between dashboards and module number two, the analytics reporting module, because within here there's going to be a history section as well as a report section where we can more powerfully the more firstly, if you will be the history section. So we can kind of cross compare data and make sure that we're grabbing the proper elements that we need to go ahead and to filter and call upon the metrics that we're able to devise in these dashboard widgets. Now, very high level here, looking at this executive view dashboard. Maybe we want to tailor something around how much call traffic is, being generated on the Zoom instance itself. What is the high watermark of call concurrency at the same time? How many calls? What are our peaks within the environment over a relative time frame? Now, I do want to make mention that all these dashboard widgets that we're going to entertain here today during this session are going to be going to have some type of relative time unit frequency on them. Now, there are refresh intervals built into each and every one of these little squares, or these what we call as widgets, within the dashboards. They can be refreshing hourly, every 15 minutes, every 5 minutes if need be. But certainly they will be progressing as time is progressing as well. So while we could be leveraging, and most of mine will probably be keying off of current and previous week, these can be certainly be tailored down to look at the current day, the current hour, the previous 7 days, the current and previous month, quarters, etc. So there's plenty of configurable time unit options on the relative call on these widgets. So ease of use, we can start, kind of see here and kind of extrapolate some information now, how many calls are being generated, high waters of concurrency, but also maybe from an executive level view, where are the calls going to, which location or region or facility has the most phone traffic. So there's going to also be organizational representation that we're reading out of the Zoom phone data. So there's going to be location levels, site levels that are more prominent, pardon me, but as well as departments as well. So we're going to see sites, departments, definitely users. We're going to be reading call queues, common areas pretty easily, and it just depends on how we wish to package them on these dashboards. Now, there's different things that we can certainly get into. There's high-level aesthetics as well. Oh, good timing. Where if we need to look at, the amount of traffic, as an example, how many calls are, again, of those calls being generated in the on the Zoom instance, how many are of the inbound, outbound, or internal variety. So those are pretty easy to create and leverage, and then can throw in, all kinds of different options if we want to see answer counts, abandoned counts, percentages, calls going to voicemail. So there's all kinds of little intricate options that we can certainly embed into these. We can even kind of chase things down to a pretty, pardon me, to a pretty granular level as well, because one of the 6 widget offerings that we do offer is going to be a call history details widget, which will look maybe something along these lines. this one in case point, I'm kind of chasing, voicemail calls down the rabbit hole to, whether or not they warrant to be, returned as far as, callbacks, if you will. So there's again different ways for us to leverage this data. Do we need to see when these are happening? We can build these into kind of time period based widgets as well. Now, we definitely have darn near every filter under the sun that we're going to need to for this data set here. But again, how we wish to call out the data on these dashboards within our 6 widget styles, there's definitely quite a few different options, as well as grouping and summary based options and additional KPIs if we're looking for department level kind of reporting at a high level with again with durations and answer rates and abandonment rates and voicemail rates. There's definitely plenty of options to go ahead and incorporate and include that stuff. So again, from an executive level, looking at maybe again the top org levels, but there's going to be different flavors of content that an environment is going to want to use. So maybe a different look and feel for maybe an IT manager. IT manager maybe isn't so concerned with the overarching volume traffic within the environment or the locations or the sub facilities. Let's just say maybe they're more inclined to worry about maybe some, emergency dialings or international dialings. Also maybe who are the repeat callers or the top inbound dialers that are calling in? Are there robo dialers that are calling in again and again and again and not connecting to anything? So there's certainly cause for concern that maybe an IT manager may want to be aware of. Certainly, we can call on call queues, but I have another dashboard for that. But also, I guess quality metrics, if you will. So Zoom Phone does support kind of a MOS score reportability within its data set. So we can certainly, and if this guy wasn't refreshing right now, we can certainly see when it's happening or which device it's happening on or which users it's happening on. So if there's phones or users or some setup configurations with Zoom that's unfortunately having issues with call degradation on these calls, we're going to be able to go ahead and identify that in the data as well, maybe even call upon it, which I'm kind of doing here at a kind of a summary level by time, by user, and maybe by device. I think this is here. Let's pull this up for a second. Yes, by device. So we're all able to read all that pretty easily, and then also once more time can easily lay out the granularity of the call data in these call history detail widgets. So again, just columns are certainly choosable, if you will. So we can certainly go into a handful of these in a moment or two, and I'm gonna try and maybe kind of create a dashboard here on the fly with all of us. I just know that time is limited, and some things that need to get loaded or copied over can take some time, but we'll get there. Now, looking at some of this content, again, um, different strokes for different folks, I normally like to say, because there's all kinds of different things that we can build on these dashboards. As you can see here, I can certainly stuff this dashboard to the gills all the way up to 25 with all kinds of different content and detailed granularity if need be. But again, different ways to kind of go ahead and slice and dice this data. Again, here's one for call queues. If we're just a manager or supervisor that's concerned or manages these call queues or is a part of these call queues, and we want to know on a frequency, again using current previous week, can always change that time frame. But again, who are the I guess which are the busiest call queues, if you will, of those call queues? Maybe list them out in maybe kind of a table view here, so we can see which is the top queue getting the most calls. If your eyes couldn't uncover this purple piece of the donut chart there. But now sales kind of being maybe the peak performer. Looks like abandonment rate is pretty much held in check with all these 10 or so call queues here. But maybe we can pick on the top call queue, which is the sales call queue. What users are handling those calls, and what is their call volume of layout to be. It looks like for the for whatever this lab here looks like most of these calls came into this call queue as of yesterday. So again, this is a little bit of lab data, so don't put too much stock into this, but certainly out in the field, this is very tangible and readily available pretty swiftly as well. If we even, again, need to lay out the abandoned callers in a very detailed light where we actually can see the phone number, again, does that warrant a call back necessarily? Is that a customer call that we missed or a client that we need to get in touch with that we were unaware of? We can certainly identify that as well, just from these dashboards. Now, that is certainly kind of long-winded here. So I want to just kind of back up a second and kind of show people how I would kind of assemble something like this. Now, definitely we can go into the edit configurations and look at the search sets or the search criteria, aka filters that are building all the content for these widgets. And I'll kind of do that right now, and we'll do a little back and forth. So I'm going to use this browser tab right here. So in this donut chart here, I'm laying out groupings based off of called site, either coming or going as far as calls that are coming to a specific call site. Telling it to list out 10, you can certainly max it out to 50 if need be. There are going to be statistical summary bars that can be baked into the top of all the widgets, which are going to be these little guys right here. To each their own if you don't want to have those turned on, but certainly if you do, you can almost kind of have two widgets in one where you can actually see all the content at a summary level, but also have breakdowns to the user or to the site in this case, or even to the devices. So search sets are always going to be the filters within Verify. So the search will house the filters, pardon me, which are known as search criteria. Now, in this example here, I'm looking for any traffic that's hitting these 10 or 15 call up sites on the Zoom system. So those being kind of leverageable, and now there will be a pick list for them as well. There's going to be others as well, but these were derived from the sites that were already defined that we're reading from the Zoom API. Now let's take a jump back over to the history section. Now within analytics here, now that's why I said I was going to bounce back and forth, because when you're building out a dashboard for the first time, you're going to maybe want to see some of your own data first before you go ahead and drive that way. Not to say that you can't try and throw mud at the wall while you're trying to build a dashboard or a few widgets for a dashboard, but you can certainly always come into this history section and utilize the search criteria and actually see what Verify is reading from the Zoom instance. So we have dynamic keyword searches built into every one of our drop downs. So typing in the word site greatly shrinks the list here for me, but I may be looking for single direction. Maybe I'm looking for outbound calls from site XYZ, or the reverse, or I'm looking for both inbound and outbound traffic from a specific call site or a specific department or a specific user. So adding that content here, then we can see a lookup here. So now we see all those site labels that I just had in my dashboard widget a second or two ago. So we can certainly select these and then view some results for them. Let's just throw a little mud at the wall, widen my gaze here. So I'll go current and previous week. And again, just throwing a little mud at the wall, calling on bidirectional by site here, using the lookup, calling upon these 8 or so sites, and then just looking at a little bit of the data. Maybe there's going to be calls that are going to be transfers that we don't necessarily need to see. Maybe we don't need the zero duration calls necessarily. Maybe we don't want calls that are coming from an internal transfer or from an internal entity. So we can certainly lock those down or lock those out of the summarizations on the dashboard widget. So that's one of the nice things certainly about Verify is we're going to have all kinds of filterable options, whether it's by duration or status. So again, exclusion of zero durations, or maybe we only wish to include certain call scenario types. So this is definitely a very powerful search filter that we have. And from there, we can go ahead and leverage, do we only want to see queued calls? Do we only want to look at, the answered calls or the abandoned calls? So there's going to be, or the voicemails, and then maybe kind of track those calls down. Again, do they warrant a callback, or is it data validation, let's just say? So the history section, I can't commend it for how useful and valuable it is to kind of identify this information. Again, do we see certain users that need to be called upon? Or is there something, maybe mistagged when I'm searching for a certain user? Maybe they're not tied to the certain, proper site or the proper department, as an example. And certainly you can let your administrators of the Zoom instance aware of that, so they get those updated if there's syncs to the user definitions. Okay. All right. Now let's see here. Um, So now creating these dashboards, maybe it's kind of, I'm not sure if we have enough time to build one out, but we can certainly look at what is used to go ahead and derive them from kind of the samples that I do have here. Now that I've zoomed in, things are kind of out. But as we can see here, there's going to be 6 different widget styles. So I'll click on the new widget button here in the upper right. 99 out of 100 times we'll be selecting call analytics. Platform for today is going to be Zoom Phone. Widget types, let me zoom in for your eyeballs as well. So the widget types, they're going to be normally our standard 6 here. There's going to be the call distribution widget, which is that kind of circular donut chart that has kind of groupings within the slices of that donut. The call history details, which was, again, that table layout of the actual granular call records themselves for date and time, phone number, extensions, call queues, et cetera, users, yada, yada. So those are definitely tangible. Call statistics is one. I think I had one earlier, was like the 911 calls, where I had that hiding somewhere. I think I moved away from it, but that one is certainly going to be a single row widget to call statistics. Now you can certainly have the option to go ahead and call upon a whole measure of statistical data points that you want to have in a single row. Now, for instance, like my 911 widget or my international call widget, which was of the call statistic variety, where it was, again, just a single row, I can show out multiple statistical data points here, or I could kind of slide it back and collapse just a single tile and can be flexed out if need be. But again, I don't use that one too too much out in the field, simply because it can kind of be replaced, if you will, by the summary bars in one of the other ones. So that's not to say that we can't go ahead and use that or leverage that. It's just to say that I don't personally use it that much. But don't get me wrong. There's definitely reasons, pardon me, for going ahead and being able to tile widgets. Now this is column manager, but being able to tile these widgets. Now this is a call statistic style widget. So as I made mention, you can certainly have multiple KPIs or metrics in here. Can certainly be kind of tailored down just a single tile. But again, one that can certainly be baked inside at the top of a another widget summary bar. Okay, so again, of those I lost my place in line, pardon me. Platform zoom. So again, the widget styles that we're going to have. So call volume by time period. So dimly in the background, you see these bar charts, back left and back right. So those are call volume by time period widgets. Now, what those are going to give you the option to do is go ahead and obviously a bar chart. But off that bar chart, you'll have options to go ahead and slice the x-axis of this. So if you need to look at the time period of the current day sliced by a hour of the day or a fraction thereof, or wider. Do we need to key off of maybe the current week or current previous week, and I want to break it down by date or day of week or week over week or month over month? You're definitely going to have those options. Last widgets that we have are going to be, I keep losing my place here. Grouping statistics. So I'm using those all over the place. Those are probably some of my more favorite ones. So using that kind of in this manner here, and this one is as well. So on this IT manager board here, I'm keying off, or it's a grouping statistics style widget. What I'm doing in this widget here is actually keying off of search filters or search criteria, looking at the called queues specifically. So now I'm offered a lookup list, and in this lab environment, I selected all of them. But again, out in the field here, you're probably not going to be selecting all of them. There's other ways to go ahead and capture all of them with maybe a scenario type equals, queued calls or something like that, or a couple different ways. But in this example here, just keying off of the filter of call queue, equaling all of these, and then getting a layout and telling it from the configuration step here that I want to primarily group the content by each call queue. Give me top 10. And then I want to see some grouping statistics for these queues, but also, again, a summary stat bar here to then kind of give me my overall arcing content for all the queues involved. And of course, the time period clock over here. So this can certainly be, the relative time window I made mention. If we need to exclude certain days of the week or certain hours of the day, depending on your time units, you certainly have tangible options to all of that. All right, so yeah, there's all kinds of different things to build. And then last but not least, just for the widget styles, then we can certainly dig into some more detailed stuff, pardon me. So there's also the utilization concurrency widget. So that's going to be probably number 6 or the last one here. Now, again, with this one, will give us a plotted line graph. And what that line graph is going to give us, I'll show you the configuration page of such. So what that's going to give you is, yes, you also have the summary stat bar here to call on high-level totals. But what it's going to give you will be that kind of that line plotted graph there. But on the x-axis, you'll have an aggregate interval to go ahead and plot those lines on. So it starts out at 10. My personal preference is going to be the 60-minute, but again, to each their own. Again, filters aplenty. So if you need to look at calls that are coming into a certain department, a certain user set, a certain call queue, or all Zoom call data that's being generated, certainly one can do that. And then what it'll do is it'll slice it in this manner right here again, so you can see for each one of those dates going back for the current and previous week, what was the peak high water mark. Now, I have included for the total call count for this time frame, and it is 2109 for this lab data set here. But what we're seeing plotted in the line graph is not the 2109. It's the peaks of these hours of the day over the collective current and previous week. Yes, we certainly have options to go ahead and strike some of these days out if we don't want them plotted, or if there's an anomaly this needs to be removed. But there's definitely kind of that dynamic function kind of baked in there as well. Now, these will certainly be refreshing as time is progressing. But also, I want to get into a few other things here. I know I'm running late on time. That's mostly why I knew I wouldn't have enough time to build my own board here live. But once we have these dashboards built or assembled, you definitely have the option to go ahead and share things and copy things. So as an example, if I want to go ahead and share my dashboard out with Dre as an example, he is an application user on this system here. I can go and fish out his user, and he should be here somewhere. There's my buddy Dre. So now I'm going to go ahead and add this to Dre. Once I go ahead and save this, now when Dre logs into this lab, he'll have access to be able to go ahead and render this shared dashboard, but it'll be read only as per his perspective. So what I mean by that, let me pick another one, is that at the very bottom of his profile, when he logs in, he'll see a shared with me underneath his dashboard section, and then he'll have my Zoom IT manager or whichever one that was that I shared with him. Now, that will be in a read only capacity, meaning that he'll be able to view the dashboard, but he will not be able to go ahead and edit, delete, or make any modifications to it or copy it. But what he can do from that, if he needs to, is he can copy onesie twosie dashboard widgets off of my shared dashboard with him to a dashboard that he owns. So there's ease of use there to go ahead and maybe if he liked one widget off of that board or a couple, or he'll have the option to go ahead and full blown clone and copy the full dashboard underneath his profile that will not harm the parent board that I created and that's shared out with him. So in other words, he can go ahead and kind of take a duplicate copy and do with it as he may. So there's definitely ease of use to go ahead and do that. And then lastly, as I made mention very earlier, is going to be the permalinking or the public access to these dashboards. So now once these widgets are constructed and maybe they're a work in progress, you can turn on the permalink option right here. And then from that, we'll go ahead and be able to go ahead and copy this URL. And then once saved, this URL is then going to be living and breathing. And then this can be shared with others within the environment to go ahead and either bookmark their browser tabs, or they can, again, as I made mention, broadcast these onto larger displays or to television screens within the environment. But the nice thing about these is that this URL is not going to change. This URL is not going to change, and nobody can change any of the content on this dashboard. It's not going to need any login access to the application. Come on now. Nor is there going to be, again, any modifications they can make therein. So this should load up the architecture for my dashboard here in a moment or so. Slow Lab is having a rough day, I guess. So these will load up here in a moment or so, and then they will refresh just like they are while I'm logged into it and viewing it live. So as time progresses, these things will be running and refreshing in the background. Again, these are fantastic to have on larger displays, or those users or managers that want that hands-off approach. They don't necessarily want to get into the application and build anything out themselves. They kind of want to have it done for them so that they can kind of go ahead and leverage what's been built for them and then have any feedback and then have someone else kind of modify it for them. So there's the ease of use kind of having these. You can certainly have permalinks that can be shared out company wide. They can be baked into intranet links and stuff like that. But again, there's not much that can be done to harm this because all anyone can do is play with the refresh, or maybe I guess play around with the cosmetic appearance. Now, even if someone were to play around with that, all anyone would need to do would be just to refresh that browser tab, and it'll snap back to its original form with current and live content. I just don't trust my systems to pull this back that swiftly. Okay, I am running a little light on time, so I do want to kick this over back for a little Q&A here. So, Dre, might there have anything I left out, or any questions I can feed from the field here?
Nothing from the field. I think you just did such a great job that we didn't have any questions today. So
Oh, I can't buy that.
I can.
All right, well, I suppose that is my show for the day. I think I'll just maybe stop my sharing and kick it back to you, sir.
All right.